we get into the crux of today's presentation, I just want to say, I could have totally just gone and spoken about today's core topic, which is the experience appraisal and the professional review. But, you know, I never take lightly that some of the people who have joined us today are obviously probably starting their journey, or they really want to prepare. And it's very important for me to touch on this simply because ECSA actually changed the registration model. So anybody who registered before 2016, you would have registered in the legacy system, and anybody who registers after. So this system here was commissioned in 2017. Let's just have a look at this. So this slide here is basically showing the professional development model. Why I wanted to show you guys this is because I get a lot of questions where people say, let me think of two examples. So somebody says, I was studying at UCT, I finished all my modules except one module. Can I register as a professional? The answer is no. Then there's another scenario where somebody says, for example, I hold a BTech, I am doing engineering work, can I register as an engineer? Guys, the answer also is no. So normally what happens with registration, it starts off with you graduating. So it has to be a qualification where you have graduated, meaning you finished everything, guys, everything. So when you become registered, what normally happens is stage one of the process is you meeting the educational outcomes. At this point, it is very crucial for me to just mention, there are four core categories. If you have a diploma, you can become a technician. If you have a BTech, you can become a professional technologist. If you have a degree, you can become a professional engineer. While I am at this, and then the fourth category is the certified engineer, and these are people who hold a GCC. While I'm on this topic, it is very crucial for me to mention that doing a master's in engineering does not allow you to jump from a professional technologist category just because you have a BTech into the engineering category simply because you have a BTech plus a master's. With that being said, this is applicable to people who registered in the old educational framework. Anybody who starts studying from the University of Technology, there is a clearly defined route that anyone can follow from a diploma up until they can register as a PRN. That is a topic for another day, but it is very important for me to just clarify these things. Now, once you have graduated, remember what I said, guys? So we're talking categories. Whatever qualification you hold is going to put you in a particular category, right? So a category is not something that you can change, you know, because in industry, you will see that a lot of people obviously want to be PRN, but it actually doesn't work like that. Your education is the one that is going to dictate the candidate category that you can be in. Now, once you've registered as candidate, guys, this section here, training and experience, what happens is once you get into industry, you need to undergo training and experience as defined in the standards. Guys, do yourself a favor, go to the ECSA website. If you go, exa.co.za, there is a tab there that's written documents. All these things are clearly defined. Now, what ECSA says to you is that when you are training, a minimum of 3 years is required, right? A minimum of 3 years. Now, if you look at the 11 outcomes, it is not often that people can actually register in 3 years flat. Why? Because they want you to get exposure to the full cycle of the engineering, an engineering project or the life cycle holistically. So generally what happens is maybe you work for a design house. For you to get exposure to other activities like commissioning and that, you might need to be seconded. But I will tell you now, people that are normally called project engineers can totally do this in 3 years. Now, once you've completed your 3 years, you now qualify to register as a professional, right? Now, in this professional category, I want you guys to understand that I think so I registered in 2008. So I think around about 2006, what normally used to happen is once you got this title of professional registration, it was yours for a lifetime. Whether you left engineering and you went to milk cows, or you started doing fashion designing, you could actually still use this title of professional engineer. However, I think in because by the time I registered, it was already not the case. So what I want us to observe right now is that once you are professionally registered, right, which is the third stage. So now you are in industry, you are doing whatever practice you are in, you need to observe the code of conduct. This is very important. Registration is about protecting the people and the environment. So therefore, when you are registered, you shall observe and comply to the code of conduct. Another thing that you need to be doing, you need to maintain your CPD points, which is continuous professional development. And then naturally, you need to pay your fees. While I'm on the slide, I wanted to pause and say this to you guys. So there are a lot of people who are actually losing their registration because of particularly the CPD points. Guys, don't do that. There are many ways that one can gather CPD points without going for a CPD accredited course. Now, if you are struggling with that, you please contact me whenever after this event. But I'm telling you now, there are ways that you can really bypass not going to CPD accredited courses. And then I think I want to share three core ways that you guys can gather CPD without actually paying for CPD accredited courses. One, if you are doing engineering work in industry, you automatically qualify for 2 CPD points annually. As long as you are practicing as an engineer, you will get 2 CPD points. Ne? Then the third point comes from you being registered with the VAs. Remember, today's event is hosted by Saice, which is a VA. When you are a member of Saice, you automatically get 1 CPD point. The third category that a lot of people are not aware of is personal contribution to industry and personal development. So as an example, if you do your master's, if you go to a conference and you present a paper, this is CPD points. The other one that is a low-hanging fruit that a lot of people actually do not utilize is mentoring. When you mentor young professionals, so many hours are equivalent to 1 CPD point. So guys, as you can see, it's very easy to get 5 CPD points a year. So what happens there is that after 5 years, you need to submit. That's the other mistake a lot of people are doing. When the 5-year lapses, I don't know if they think that ECSA is the one who's going to automatically say, send your CPD record. No, that's not what happens. After 5 years, there is a form that you need to use where you will lodge all your CPD points. Then you send it similar to how you applied for your professional registration. But literally, it boils down to just CPD, because what needs to be happening is that you are continuously learning, you are continuously staying abreast with technologies and everything in industry. So I wanted you guys to be aware of this. So also crucial to mention, previously, they used to have what was called an alternate route in the true sense of the type of work you are doing in industry. In the new registration system, I also forgot to mention that ECSA is a member of the International Engineering Alliance, so they comply to these rules that everybody in the alliance is subjected to. And what normally happens there is the education is a requirement. You cannot bypass the education part. Now let's talk about the different registration requirements. In industry, and I think this confusion is actually created by the fact that when companies when advertise posts, they sometimes say, we need you to be registered. And then they might say, so let's say, for example, it's somebody who's been working less than 3 years. They're normally gonna say, we need you to be registered as a candidate. What we need to be understanding by that is that your employer just simply wants to know that the education that you hold is accredited according to South African standards. Because as you can imagine, there's been cases where people have done, say, a degree in another country, but when they come and evaluate that degree in South Africa, it is found to be equivalent to, say, a BTech. Vice versa, somebody else could do a BTech in another country. When they come to South Africa, that could be found to be equivalent to a BSc. So when you are a candidate, all we need to be observing is that you need to satisfy the relevant educational outcomes. As I said, these documents that clearly define these requirements are also on the website. Then today's event is literally focused on the professional categories. And really, when you want to be registered as a member of ECSA, I want you guys to understand that, because what is happening sometimes is that somebody holds a degree, but they deal with project management and not solving engineering problems. Guys, you will see the landscape of the built environment's got different councils. So if you are somebody who deals with managing projects, you need to go register with the Council of Project Management. When you want to register with ECSA, you need to be somebody who is solving engineering problems. Now, we remember phase 1 says you need to have some educational qualification and you must have graduated. Then the second stage of it is you need to demonstrate competence. Now, a lot of people get confused with this. There's a lot of people who are actually applying for their PRH, but, you know, they find that maybe, say, sometimes they even pass the experience appraisal. Then when they get to PR, they fail. It is, and then people say, hey, no, I'm in industry, I'm doing the work and the work is relevant. So you need to demonstrate the work. It is very important for us to pay attention to this. You need to demonstrate the work. Let me leave it now, and then you will understand when we talk about the two stages, the two core stages of registration. What is really demonstration about? Now, I just wanted to show you guys that competence, let us all understand that competence is something that is developed by education, training, and experience. While I'm on this point, I want to encourage you guys, and I say this, I know it's something not easy to do, but if it is possible, please try as far as possible to do this for yourself. When you are training, remember what I said, ECSA stipulates a minimum of 3 years before you can become registered. Ne? Now, they say in that 3 years, the first 2 years, you are afforded an opportunity to go into industry and train. Now, what happens with a lot of people is they find themselves doing work that is not aligned to the requirements. So I'm saying to you guys, please, please, please make sure you are well versed with the 11 outcomes, and every activity you partake, at least 80% of the activities that you do while you are in industry are actually aligned to what is required. Because in the 3rd year, you are supposed to be somebody who is discharging their duties at the level of somebody who is registered. The only difference is that you obviously would not be registered. So what happens at that point is you are somebody who is responsible, but you are not accountable. So we all know about the signing, right? So you can do the work, but you cannot sign off those designs. So literally that's what happens in the 3rd year. I will touch on the outcomes because I do keep in mind that some of the people who are here might have just graduated. As a result, they do not know what the outcomes are. Then this is something very, very important for us to pay attention to. By the time you get registered, you need to have a clearly defined area of competence. Let me make an example with myself. I am electrical, right? Electrical is broad. I could graduate from wherever. I could work with power lines. I could have worked with telecoms. I could have worked with power stations. So an area of competence is a specific area of practice. By the time you register, you have to have a clearly defined area of competence. Ne? And this is speaking to the section in industry where you have knowledge and skill. Why this is important is because people need to know that when you are offering solutions to problems, you are somebody who is competent to do that. If we do not do this, we end up having bridges falling on people. We end up having, so it is very important that when you write that report, please hear me clearly, especially when you write the engineering report. I am going to touch all the different components that make up the application, because I want you to leave this room knowing What is it exactly that is required? By the time you write the engineering report, which is basically a self-assessment, it is where you tell ECSA, I am ready to be trusted in industry, I am ready to be promoted at work. So when you write that report, you have to clearly tell the assessor, my area of competence, for example, if you are civil, my area of competence is civil water, civil roads, civil area of competence. Please do not forget that. It is good for you to make this transparent to the reader, because if you do not do that, those are some of the reasons that will have you stuck at the experience appraisal stage. Before I actually go into the different pieces that make up the application form and what it is that ECSA assesses when they take your application, it is very important for us to understand the different role players. Now at ECSA, here are the role players that you should be aware of. There is somebody who is called an assessor. What an assessor does is they take the submissions, so your written application, they go and they evaluate it. So they take the written evidence of your competence and they evaluate it. What they do post that, they're going to write a report that says, no, me, I am happy that Lebu has met the 11 outcomes. And normally what happens in that case, if all 4 assessors are happy with your report, you are going to have that application submitted to somebody who is called a moderator. So what a moderator does is they're going to check the findings of those assessors. Ne? And literally, this is the same as university. Remember in university, even when we write exams, we have somebody who's called a moderator. This is somebody who ensures that everything is objective. This process is objective. Once the moderator is happy with the findings, and literally, normally what happens is, because the assessors are very experienced people, I need to say this before I actually move on to there. I need everyone in the room to understand that assessing is an independent process. So anybody who is allocated to assess your report, they do not speak to the other assessor. They do it independently, they write their recommendation and they send it back to ECSA. Now the moderator is going to look at that. And normally what happens is, you know, the assessors are supposed to obviously be resonating the same sort of vibe. Why? Because they're reading the same documentation. When the moderator is happy, then they send your application to the next stage. And what happens at that stage, there is somebody called a reviewer. A reviewer is somebody who checks for verbal evidence of your competence. I tell people this, and I don't know, sometimes when you are getting registered, you are getting assessed for 2 core competencies, writing ability and the speaking ability. We know as people in the engineering space that when we solve a problem, there's always more than one solution for the problem. So ECSA is basically saying, when you are offering these solutions to industry, you need to be able to speak well. Because people are going to ask you, no, but this one is cheaper. This one is what? You need to be able to justify yourself. Also, after the reviewer goes and checks your verbal evidence, there is a moderator. What the moderator does is they check the recommendations of those 3 reviewers. Now, at this point, it's good for me to mention that obviously when we are at the review stage, remember a review is an interview, it's a verbal interview. So those people are going to be sitting obviously in one room. So whatever recommendation they make, unlike the recommendation that is made at the assessing stage, it's obviously upon agreement of all the assessors that are in the room. Then there's still somebody who's called a moderator. The moderator also goes and satisfies themselves that everything that has been done, it's transparent, it's clear. This is even more important in a case where somebody gets declined. So declined is when your registration is not successful and you are told to go back into industry and address whatever is missing and then come back to. So I need everyone also to understand, before I move off the slide, another core thing that everyone needs to be understanding here is that all these people that are in the process at ECSA, nobody looks at your application more than twice. Like if somebody is assessing, They will not be able to review or moderate. These are some of the filters that have been put in the process to ensure that the process is objective. There is not going to be one person who's got the power to assess, to review it, to moderate. That does not happen. Now let's go and talk about, okay, this thing needs to be moved. Let's go and talk about the role players at work. These are very core. And the reason why I thought I would just put this slide is for everyone to have an understanding that when you go into industry, your attitude, the way you carry yourself is very crucial, because these two people are the ones that are going to say, yes, Lebo can be registered even before ECSA gets involved in the process. Please understand that. If you go to work, you are lazy, you are not driven, you have excuses all the time, you don't go to work, by the time you want to get registered, you are going to get stuck. Now, I just touched on the two core role players. We have somebody who's called a mentor. Now, let us understand that a mentor can also be a supervisor, a mentor can also be a referee. And it is obvious why. Because somebody who does design your program can also be somebody who teaches you something. So for example, in a power line, there's electrical, there's mechanical, there's civil matters. If I mentor somebody who is electrical, obviously I'm also going to be a supervisor for that candidate. Let's just look at what a mentor is. A mentor is a person registered as in a specified category, and this is a person who develops the candidate's competency. And this person hopefully needs to be in the appropriate discipline. This is very important for us to understand, because naturally, when you are actually getting registered, let's understand that if I have somebody in the right category as me and in the right discipline, do you know this is going to help you when it comes to assessing the complexity of your work. I want you guys to understand, if you are working in a workplace, you are civil, and all the registered people in the company are electrical. You are more than welcome to use those people as a referee. So when they say to you a registered referee, it does not mention a specific discipline. But we can all agree that if you are having somebody in the same discipline as you, there's going to be advantages to that. So what a mentor does is they plan your training program task by task. That's why I was saying at the beginning that whenever you are in the first 2 years of your training, try and make sure that obviously it's not possible to make sure that every activity is going to address the 11 outcomes. Because obviously people are going to ask you to write minutes in meetings. People are going to ask you to do other administrative roles. And these are good for you also because they sharpen your writing skills. But you need to try and, as far as possible, to ensure that everything you engage in is meant to develop your competence. And you will see just now what are the 11 outcomes that are required. I have to say this is very important, very, very important. A mentor is somebody who has to review your full submission. Same as a referee. Ideally, anybody who becomes your referee, hopefully is going to have the time to read the full submission, for the sole reason that they have to ensure that all the 11 outcomes are actually addressed in the report. But for now, let's just keep it to the mentor. Remember, the mentor is the person who developed the program task by task. Obviously, when you write the report, they need to go make sure that everything is adequately addressed and also addressed at the right level of responsibility. So what a mentor does, a mentor is definitely somebody who must be a referee. I know there's already somebody who's saying, what if my mentor is not registered? You can use that individual to be your referee, but all it means is that you are going to have more than the minimum stipulated referees. You will see, I think 2 weeks back, I hosted a class on Inspire the Next. You'll see it's loaded on the YouTube, where basically I just explained for the different categories, what are the requirements? How do you choose your referees? Now, what I'm saying, if your referee is not registered, you still use that individual. Then for the minimum stipulated at ECSA, you can use other people. But your referee, your mentor definitely has to be one of your referees. Let's talk about a supervisor. It's very important to mention the supervisor. So, because a supervisor is somebody who is registered, hopefully. Please, when we say registered, always keep in mind that registered is the ideal case. You ideally want somebody who is registered. If you do not have somebody who is registered, it does not take away from the fact that there are going to be individuals that are going to teach you something that you need to know about the industry that you are in. So a supervisor then, let's understand this. He is somebody who directs, oversees, controls, supervises, and takes responsibility for the work that the candidate does. It's important for me to say this. When we go to university, we are given fundamentals, all of them. But when you go into industry, you zoom into a particular trade. So a supervisor is somebody who's going to teach you something. Because I work with power lines, I'm going to just make an example from power lines. So in the power line chain, obviously there's going to be a civil supervisor who teaches people about foundations. There's going to be a mechanical supervisor who teaches people about structures. There's going to be an electrical person who teaches people about electric fields and magnetic fields and corona and all those good things. So what we should be understanding is a supervisor is somebody who is transferring some particular skill. So you've got this training program. At some point, there will be a task where some supervisor is going to teach you something. Now, what we should all be understanding at this point is that a supervisor is somebody who is going to sign some particular TER. This is a training and experience report. They're going to sign a TER. What I actually encourage people to do is, if, say, for example, you've got, so a typical healthy report is going to have about 5 or 6 training and experience reports. For me, I will definitely go and use anybody who supervised me. Why? Because there are direct evidence of whether I did learn and whether I do apply myself at the level of a registered person. But what it should be noted is that a supervisor is somebody who's going to sign a particular TR. Again, I say, remember, your mentor can be a supervisor. Also, I encourage you to use your supervisor as a referee. Now, let's talk about the stages, the registration stages. It's very important to speak about this because this 2 stages really became a part of the registration process in 2017 when the new registration system was commissioned. Going back to, say, I think post-2006, what used to happen is that not even all engineers used to get registered, interviewed. They will only interview people where if they read your report, something seemed to be lacking. Post-2006, what normally happened is that all the engineers used to get registered, technologists and technicians never used to get registered. So since 2017, it is good for me to mention that these steps that I'm sharing are applicable to all categories and all disciplines. So whether you are a technician, engineer, technologist, whether you are civil, mechanical, electrical, this process is the same for everyone. Even for the guys who are certified, this process is the same. So the first stage of the process, ladies and gentlemen, is called an experience appraisal. We already spoke about this briefly. What happens at that experience appraisal? They are checking for your written competence. Remember, these people that are assessing you are not in the workplace with you when you are doing these activities. So how you write the report is very important. You have to give them what they need to know. I say this to people because some of the people like to write too much detail about what the project is and not what they are responsible for in the project. When you write your report, it is very important that everything you write addresses the 11 outcomes. We don't just, I'll make you a good example. A lot of people, when they have worked on Mudupi or Kusile, they really get excited by the fact that these projects are big, they are famous, you know, whatever. But what were you actually doing at Mudupi? What if you were taking minutes? The assessor doesn't want to know about the project. It is about the engineering problems that you solved. Please, ladies and gentlemen, just ensure that everything you write, because you will see also when you go into the application, there is a limit as to how much you can write. So this is avoiding us submitting a Bible. Another thing that people like to do, and this is purely a result of being lazy, is that they take a project report at work and they cut and paste it in there. Don't do that. A project is multidisciplinary. So you are never going to be responsible for all of those things. What you should be doing as an individual is focusing on your area of competence. Remember earlier I spoke about that. This is why it's very important for you to clearly know what your area of competence is. Now, let's just say in an ideal process, what happens is that your submission is reviewed. Let's just say now, iteration number 1, the assessors are very happy with your submission. What they're going to do is they're going to send you to phase 2. Remember, written is number 1, it's adequate. They're going to send you to the verbal assessment. While we are on the experience appraisal, it's very important for me to share with you guys what happens in the case where your report is not adequate. So you have written this report, the assessor reads it, and they find some missing outcomes. What happens normally, and please, I need you guys to really focus here because a lot of people get this wrong. So the first iteration of it is if they read your report and what is missing is not major, or rather you have written it high level, you have not actually covered enough detail to give insight to your responsibilities or the actual complexity of the activity. What they're going to do is they will call you in for an interview. What this interview does is it is going to probe only the missing outcomes. It does not probe everything. It probes only the missing outcomes. A lot of people get letters to come to an interview, and sometimes they mistaken the EA for a PR. So we need to be understanding that if you are called for an EA interview, read that letter properly. They are going to tell you, okay, and I don't want to lie to you, 90% of people that do not make it is because of outcome 1, 2, 8, and 9. It's the core outcomes. So then when they call you for an interview, you should actually be happy. Because what they are doing is they are filling in the gap immediately. They are saying, no, 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 no. We see this missing, come in and just give us the answers, 100%. Now, this normally happens if you are missing the core outcomes. If your submission is missing the softer things, communication, managing engineering activities, normally what they can do, also for the core, but normally for the core, if they need to understand, especially the complexity of the activities you are involved with, they're going to call you for an interview. If you know what is missing is something, it's a matter of, they can see that you forgot to write it down because you probably think it's not important. They are going to ask you to submit something additional, and they're going to tell you exactly what to submit. Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to the letter. It's going to tell you outcome 5, 8, and 9. So when you write that submission, you do not write everything. You write just to address the missing outcomes. Now, these 2 stages, okay, obviously the interview stage is more immediate because they call you, they make a decision. The second thing of submitting additional information, it's reliant on you. If you take too long to write back to ECSA, obviously. Now, one that is really having a lot of people, giving a lot of people headache is abeyance. Ladies and gentlemen, when you are put in abeyance, it is when the assessors can see that the work you are doing or the level of responsibility that you are discharging at work is not at the required level in terms of becoming professionally registered. What they do then, they send you back to industry. They send you back to industry for an additional 12 months. Also in that scenario, they are going to tell you, please submit a new TR, please submit, most of the time they're going to say, submit a new engineering problem that you've worked on recently. So what you should be understanding is abeyance is obviously something that hypothetically can delay your registration for an additional 12 months. What you need to be understanding, you do not need to wait for 12 months. If what they are asking from you is readily available, you can go and write that report Within 3 months, you can submit. So please, please understand these iterations, because some of the people get called for an interview and they panic. And I normally say to them, this is actually a good thing, because by the time you go to stage 2, you've already gotten a dry run, or sort of like a prep session of stage 2. When you are in abeyance, I want to tell you this. If you do not submit within 12 months, ladies and gentlemen, you have literally refused yourself. Your application is going to be canned, and the next time you want to register, you're going to start from day 1. Please don't do this. If you are finding yourself in abeyance, please contact me. Lockdown, a lot of people in abeyance got sorted because they went and got the relevant assistance. I always say to someone, if you are in abeyance, please understand that what you are doing, you are very close to the finishing line. I would not, because also remember, if you don't submit within 12 months, you're going to pay again. The next time you submit, you're going to pay the fees again. Please don't let that happen, lapse, ladies and gentlemen. Then the second stage of registration is the professional review. A professional review is an interview. This is where I was saying the assessors are going to be sitting in one room. They are going to sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Where is this person going?
Sorry, Lebo, I just wanted to warn you that we've got 10 minutes left in the presentation.
Cool.
I'm not too sure how far.
Yeah, no, we are literally, these components make up the core reason why we are here. So when you go for that professional review, it's verbal confirmation of what you have written. It's what you've written. So there's no reason to fail, but a lot of people are actually failing. This slide is not even something I want to focus on, but it's very important for me to show it, especially for the people who are not familiar with the new registration system. The 11 outcomes are divided into 5 groups, ladies and gentlemen. And what happens at ECSA, they are grouped according to similar activities. So solving engineering problems, managing engineering activities, impact of engineering activities, and then obviously acting ethically, applying sound engineering judgment, and taking responsibility. And then obviously group number E is the initial professional development portion of it. A lot of people don't write it in the engineering report because they feel like there's another form that captures this. That's not the case. You have to actually cover this in your engineering report. Now let's talk about the different pieces that make up your report. Let's pause here and say, everything you submit as part of your application has to be in the form. There is no attaching a project report from work. There's no. Unless they specifically say, please attach drawings you have, but everything that you write will be in the application form. So what happens, there's something called a training and experience summary. This is what you've done from the time you graduated. Training and experience report is literally as you grow, as your level of responsibility is growing. And then a TOE, let me not even talk too much about this, but for everybody who has not registered, but has worked more than 10 years, you can summarize the first 7 years of your work experience and then write the training and experience report for the last 3 years. The engineering report is very important. Everybody has to write this because this is a self-assessment. This is where you prove to ECSA that you have met the requirement. IDP is your initial professional development. Very important for you guys to actually focus on that. And then we've got the referee report. The third thing that you guys should be knowing is that you will never at any point get to see the referee report. This is sad. Whatever your referees say about you, you will never get to know. And what is important for me to say right now is a lot of people don't understand. When you submit, your referees are the first people to indicate whether you are ready or you are not ready. On this side, it just shows who needs to sign off that report. This is nothing fancy. So as you can see, we'll be running out of time, so I'm going to skip that. Let us come to the experience appraisal. So when the people are doing the experience appraisal, this is a very important slide. Remember, we said these are the 11 outcomes that they look for. So now I've made a summary for you guys to see. These are the different components that make up your report. And then what the X shows is Where is the assessor finding the evidence for your competence? Please pay attention to those X's, because when you write your report, you've got to make sure in the TR you account for all these 11 outcomes. Now, let's take an example. Let's talk about, I just want to pick one that is a good example to. So let's just pick outcome. Let's talk about outcome number 8. Is it not correct that when you write your report, you are definitely going to say to the assessor, I am responsible, I conduct myself ethically? What is very important for all of us to understand is the referee is somebody who's going to verify this. Let me say that again. Whether you conduct yourself ethically or not, whether you apply sound engineering judgment when you do your work or not, is something that your referee is going to be confirming. So because we've run out of time, I just wanted you to see here that when we speak about, for example, outcome 5 is communicate clearly with others in the course of doing your engineering activities. You will see that at the professional review, it is one of the core steps where people will satisfy themselves that outcome 5, you are adequate or more than adequately competent for that. So I think in closing, let me just say that you will see that at the professional review, which is the interview, and at the, okay, so it's not here. At the experience appraisal, remember at the experience appraisal, they're going to look at your TRs and your engineering report. You have to address all the 11 outcomes. You have to address all the 11 outcomes. If you want to get yourself well-versed on what the actual requirement is in terms of outcome 1, outcome 2, please go to the YouTube channel. There's plenty of videos there that actually explain what these things are. But I'm going to then leave it there because I see I've run out of time. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, those X's are just showing you where should the different outcomes be accounted for. So, and literally you can see that most of the 11 outcomes should be found in every piece of the report, except obviously outcome 3. Outcome 3 is literally theory. So you will see it's part of the courses that you have attended, the conferences that you have gone to in the, with the goal of you improving your competence. And then of course, IDP is very important. But what I need to say about IDP, a lot of people are understanding that it's CPD accredited courses. That is not the case. Your initial professional development does not necessarily have to be CPD accredited. I'm going to leave it there because I think at least everyone has got a good idea of what are the required outcomes and what are the different pieces that make up the report. Then my last slide is just saying, I mean, if you have learned something that you found to be very useful, please go and share it with your coworkers, share it with your neighbor. Inspire the next means exactly that. Don't let somebody else suffer with something where you've got the answer.